Hey guys, tonight we're taking a journey behind the high stone walls and heavy oak doors of a medieval monastery. We tend to think of these places as serene islands of peace and scholarly contemplation in a sea of medieval chaos. We imagine clean-shaven monks in their quiet cloisters, illuminating beautiful manuscripts, their lives a gentle, orderly rhythm of prayer and work. But tonight, we're going to look past the stained glass and the plain song chant to discover the hidden, and often disgusting, reality of monastic life. We're going to explore the awful diseases that plagued these holy communities, turning these sanctuaries for the soul into unexpected petri dishes for the body. And let's be honest, you, with your modern understanding of germ theory, your love of hand sanitizer, and your expectation that a communal living space should have a slightly more advanced sanitation plan than a bucket and a prayer, would probably not thrive. You'd last about a week before your desperate attempts to explain the importance of hand washing after using the latrine would get you branded as a lunatic with dangerous, new-fangled ideas. Your quest for spiritual purity would likely end with a very worldly case of dysentery. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a simple, no-cost way to show your support, and it truly makes a huge difference. And following our tradition, I'd love to see where everyone is listening from tonight. Please post your city, country, and local time in the comments. It's always a joy to see our community of history enthusiasts settling in for the night together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your life in the world is loud, dirty, and uncertain. You live in a 13th century town where the streets are a river of mud and filth, where the clang of the blacksmith's hammer is never ending, and where the threat of a sudden, violent death at the hands of a drunken soldier or swift-moving plague is a constant. Low-level hum of anxiety. You look at the lives of the men around you, lives of desperate commerce, of feudal obligation, of sins of the flesh and of the spirit, and your soul yearns for something more. It yearns for peace, for order, for a life dedicated not to the grubby business of survival, but to the glorious business of God. And so you look to the great monastery that sits on a hill overlooking your town. From a distance, it appears as a vision of the heavenly Jerusalem. Its stone walls are strong and secure. Its great church tower reaches towards the heavens. It is a place of serene order in a world of chaos, a fortress of faith. You make a decision. You will renounce the world. You will give your life to God. You will become a monk. Historians debate the primary motivations that drove the great monastic boom of the Middle Ages. Was it a wave of intense, personal piety like yours? A genuine turning away from a world seen as corrupt and sinful? Or was it also a powerful socio-economic force for the landless second sons of nobles with no inheritance? Or for a bright peasant boy with no prospects? The church offered a structured and often powerful career path. The monastery was a social safety net as much as it was a spiritual sanctuary. For you, the reasons are simpler. You seek refuge for your soul, and you believe you will find it here. You present yourself at the monastery gates. You are brought before the abbot, a man whose quiet authority is more commanding than any lord's. He questions you, testing the sincerity of your vocation. You are accepted as a novice, a student in the school of God. The first thing that happens is an act of transformation. You are stripped of your worldly clothes, the rough, dirt-stained tunic of your old life. You are given the simple, coarse habit of a monk, a robe of undyed wool that scratches your skin. It is a uniform of humility. Then comes the tonsure. You kneel, and a monk with a sharp razor carefully shaves the crown of your head, leaving a fringe of hair, a circlet that symbolizes both the crown of thorns and your new status as a servant of Christ. The cold air on your newly bare scalp is a startling. Physical reminder that you are no longer the man you were yesterday. You have entered a sanctuary. The chaos of the outside world is shut out by the high stone walls. Your new life is one of profound, rhythmic order, governed by the rule of Saint Benedict. This great 6th century text is the foundation of your existence, a common historical fact for thousands of monks across Europe. Your day is divided into a strict cycle of prayer and work. Ora et labora. You are woken long before dawn by the tolling of a bell for the first service of the day. Matins. You shuffle, half asleep, into the vast, cold, and dark church, your footsteps echoing in the immense space. Your voice joins the others in the plainsong chant, the ancient, haunting melodies that are the daily soundtrack of your new life. Between the 7 daily services, there is work. You might be assigned to the kitchens, to the vast fields and gardens that supply the monastery's food. Or, if you are literate and have a steady hand, to the scriptorium. Here, in a quiet, dedicated room, you will spend your days copying the Holy Scriptures, your quill pen scratching away, preserving the Word of God for future generations. It all feels so clean, so pure, so orderly compared to the world you left behind. You have taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. You have renounced the sins of the flesh and the distractions of wealth. You have found your sanctuary, but as the weeks turn into months, you begin to notice things. You begin to understand that while these walls may keep out the spiritual sickness of the world, they are a perfect breeding ground for the sicknesses of the body. You have not entered a sanctuary from sickness. You have entered an incubator. The very architecture of your salvation is a source of peril. The magnificent stone church, so beautiful and awe-inspiring, is also a vast, unheatable cavern of cold. The dampness seeps from the stones year-round, a permanent chill that gets into your bones. You feel it during the long pre-dawn services, a deep, shivering cold that no wool habit can truly ward off. This chronic chill weakens the body, making it more susceptible to the coughs and fevers that constantly ripple through the community. Your vow of poverty means that you own nothing. All things are held in common. You drink from a common cup in the refectory. You wash your hands and face in a common basin. You sleep in the great communal dormitory, the dorter, on a simple straw-filled pallet, surrounded by the breathing, coughing, and snoring of 50 other men. You live in closer proximity to your fellow monks than any family in the world outside, and in this close, communal life, sickness, once it arrives, can spread with the speed of a wildfire through a dry forest. The monastery is designed as a spiritual fortress, an obscure but powerful concept of the time. The layout, with its high walls and its central, protected cloister, was intended to be a fortress where you and your brothers could wage a spiritual war against the demons that assailed humanity. But this fortress, you soon learn, has its own traitors within the walls. You came here to find spiritual health, to purify your soul. But as you listen to the constant, hacking cough of the elderly brother in the cot next to you, as you feel the persistent, damp chill from the stone walls seep into your own joints, you begin to have a new, unsettling thought. You have found a sanctuary for your soul. Yes, but you begin to suspect it may be a trap for your body. The awful diseases have not been shut out by these holy walls. They live here, too, as a constant, quiet, and ever-present part of your new life of devotion. You have taken your vows, and the great oak gates of the monastery have closed behind you, shutting out the chaotic, sinful world. You have entered a sanctuary, a realm of profound order and quiet purpose. But as you settle into the strict, unvarying rhythm of your new life, you begin to discover that this fortress, built to protect your soul, is ingeniously designed to assault your body, the cold, the damp, and the communal nature of your devotional life create a perfect environment for sickness to flourish. Your day begins in the deepest part of the night, long before the sun has considered rising. The sharp, insistent clang of the bell for matins rips you from a shallow, cold sleep. You rise from your straw pallet in the great dormitory, the door, and shuffle, shivering into the darkness. The dormitory is a long, high-ceilinged hall, lined with the simple beds of your 50 brothers. The air is thick, stale, and cold, filled with the recycled breath, the snores, the wheezes, and the wet, hacking coughs of dozens of sleeping men. Living in the dormitory is a great way to build brotherhood and to share everything with your fellow monks, including every single respiratory virus currently known to man. You follow the procession of dark, hooded figures out of the dormitory and into the great church. The church is the heart of your world, a soaring masterpiece of stone and glass designed to lift the soul to God. It is also, you quickly learn, a vast stone-lined refrigerator. The immense stone walls and floor act as a heat sink, storing the winter's chill deep within them, releasing it all year round. The air inside is always degrees colder than the air outside. Your breath plumes before you in a white cloud, mingling with the fragrant smoke from the incense burner. The monastery is a beautiful example of Gothic architecture, a style that emphasizes soaring ceilings, magnificent stonework, and a complete and utter disregard for heating. It's spiritually uplifting and physically freezing. You stand for hours on the cold stone floor. Your bare feet for you are only simple leather sandals growing numb. The plainsong chant echoes beautifully in the cavernous space. But so does the sound of Brother Thomas's deep, chesty cough, or Brother Michael's thin, persistent sniffle. You are all breathing the same air, sharing the same invisible motes of sickness, which swirl in the drafts created by the high, unglazed windows. This constant, penetrating cold begins to settle into your joints. A deep, persistent ache that you learn to offer up to God as a small, personal penance. After the service, you return to the dormitory as the first gray light of dawn appears. You do not return to a warm bed. Your bed is a thin pallet stuffed with straw, which over time becomes compacted, damp, and a perfect, thriving metropolis for fleas, lice, and other unseen biting things. You spend many nights trying to find sleep while fighting the maddening itch of these tiny, unwelcome companions. Another small mortification of the flesh to be endured. Personal hygiene is a matter of ritual, not sanitation. Before meals, you and your brothers gather at the lavabo, a large stone wash basin, often beautifully carved. Located in the cloister, here, you wash your hands, but it is a communal washing in a shared basin of cold water. Using a shared towel, it is an act of symbolic purification before eating. But in practice, it is more likely an efficient way of sharing germs before you share bread. Bathing for the sake of cleanliness or comfort is seen as a worldly luxury, a sensual indulgence to be avoided. The rule of Saint Benedict, the guide for your entire life, allows for baths for the sick, but discourages them for the healthy and young. You might be permitted a full bath 2 or 3 times a year. As a result, your body and your heavy wool habit are in a state of perpetual, low-level uncleanliness. Another perfect environment for the skin ailments that constantly plague the community. The most impressive and perhaps most dangerous piece of technology in your new home is the sanitation system, in an age where the common town dwellers simply threw their waste into the street. A great monastery like yours is a marvel of engineering. You have a dedicated building for this purpose. The Redorter, or Necessarium. It is a long stone room, often built over a running stream, lined with a row of wooden seats, each separated by a low partition. It is a communal latrine, a place of profound humility where even the abbot must sit and perform the most basic of human functions alongside the lowliest novice. This system, which seems so advanced, is in fact a catastrophic flaw. The stream that so efficiently carries your community's waste away from the latrine is the very same stream that runs through the monastery grounds. Downstream. It flows out into the world. But upstream, a few hundred yards from the rearward order, is the monastery's water intake. This is where the water is drawn for the kitchens where your food is cooked, for the brewery where your ale is made, and for the lavabo where you wash your hands. Archaeologists and historians of a later age will marvel at the sophistication of your plumbing, sometimes involving complex systems of lead pipes to channel the water throughout the monastery. They will also debate whether this advanced system was a net positive or a fatal curse. The monastery has a state-of-the-art plumbing system for the 13th century. The latrine empties into the river, and your drinking water comes from also the river. It's a very efficient, closed-loop system of perpetual gastrointestinal distress. A single sick monk, his waste entering the river, can contaminate the entire water supply, turning your advanced plumbing into a highly efficient delivery system for waterborne diseases like dysentery and typhoid. The lead pipes themselves, an obscure but common feature, would have slowly leached the toxic metal into your water, contributing to a host of chronic ailments: joint pain, stomach trouble, mental fogginess that you would have interpreted as spiritual weakness or trial from God. The cloister, the beautiful, covered walkway around a central garden, is the main highway of your life. You walk its paved stones every day, moving from the dormitory to the church, from the church to the refectory, from the refectory to the scriptorium. It is the quiet, contemplative heart of the monastery. It is also, for much of the year, open to the elements. On a rainy day, the wind blows a fine mist of water into the walkway. To get from one part of the monastery to another, you must pass through these damp, drafty corridors. Your heavy wool habit becomes soaked, and in the cold, damp stone buildings, it can take days to fully dry. You spend a great deal of your time in a state of dampness, a constant, low-level chill that invites sickness into your lungs. You came to this place seeking a sanctuary, a clean and holy place set apart from the filth of the world. And in a spiritual sense, you have found it. The life here is pure, orderly, and focused on God. But you have learned that the physical reality is far different. You live in a world of stone that is perpetually cold and damp. You sleep in a crowded room, breathing the recycled air of your sick brothers. You drink water that has been blessed by the priest but is first passed by the latrines. You have entered a spiritual fortress, but you realize now that the walls were not built to keep sickness out. They were built to keep you in, and you are trapped here, in this cold, damp life of devotion, with the germs and the diseases as your most constant and most intimate companions. Your new home is a fortress of cold stone and damp air, a perfect environment for sickness to take root. But the strength of a fortress also depends on the vitality of its defenders, and the very rules that govern your holy life. The pious diet designed to purify your soul often have the unfortunate side effect of weakening your body's own defenses, leaving you a less effective soldier in the constant war against disease. Your relationship with food is now governed not by hunger or by taste, but by theology. Gluttony is one of the 7 deadly sins. The pleasures of the palate are a temptation of the flesh, a distraction from the higher calling of prayer and contemplation. Your meals are not social gatherings. They are eaten in the great dining hall, the refectory, in complete silence, broken only by the voice of one of your brothers reading aloud from a sacred text. Food is fuel, nothing more. It is the sustenance required to keep the body's engine running so that the soul may do God's work. The foundation of your diet is laid out in the great rule of Saint Benedict, the text that governs your every waking moment. The rule is wise and seeks moderation, but its prescriptions, when filtered through the realities of a medieval supply chain and a northern European climate, result in a diet of profound and relentless monotony. The most significant rule, a common historical fact of monastic life, is the restriction on meat. The flesh of four-legged animals, beef, pork. Lamb is seen as a heavy food that incites worldly passions and lustful thoughts. It is forbidden for all but the sick, your primary source of animal protein. Therefore, is fish. The monastery has its own large fish ponds, meticulously maintained, where carp and tench and other freshwater fish are raised. You eat fish. You eat it boiled. You eat it salted. You eat it baked. You eat so much bland, bony, boiled fish that you begin to feel estranged. Spiritual kinship with the cats that prowl the monastery grounds, the true staple of your diet. The great, bland bedrock of every meal is pottage. This is a thick, soupy stew, a perpetual motion of a meal that symbols for hours over the fire in the monastery kitchens. Into the great cauldron goes whatever is available from the monastery's gardens. Cabbages, onions, leeks, turnips, peas and beans are added for substance. And barley, always barley, is used to thicken it. The whole thing is boiled for hours, until the individual ingredients surrender their identity and merge into a single. Gray, unappetizing mush. It is nutritious in a basic sort of way, but it is utterly devoid of joy. The monastic diet has two main food groups, things that are gray and things that have been boiled for 6 hours. It's a culinary philosophy that really emphasizes humility. Alongside the pottage, there is bread, but bread, like men, exists in a hierarchy. The abbot, the senior monks, and any noble guests who might be staying at the monastery eat fine. White bread, the panis armigerorum, made from sifted wheat flour, it is a sign of their high status. You, a common monk in the choir, eat the bread of the people, a heavy, dark, and dense loaf made from rye or barley, often with the chaff and other impurities still mixed in. It is hearty, it fills your belly, but it can lie like a stone in your gut. And it is this rye bread that carries with it one of the most terrifying and bizarre diseases of the medieval world, St. Anthony's fire. Sometimes, a fungus called ergot will grow on the rye, a dark, purplish spur that looks like a mouse dropping. If this contaminated rye is harvested and ground into your flour, the results are catastrophic. The disease begins with a feeling of intense, crawling heat under your skin, as if your very blood is on fire. This is followed by vivid, terrifying hallucinations, visions of demons, of hellfire that you might mistake for a spiritual crisis. And then comes the final, horrifying stage, the gangrene. The fungus restricts the blood flow to your extremities, your fingers, your toes, your hands, your feet begin to turn black, to shrivel and become mummified until they simply fall off, without pain or blood. You have just witnessed a brother being carried to the infirmary, screaming that his limbs are burning, his mind lost in a hell of his own making. But even when the food is not poisoned, its lack of variety takes a toll. The absence of red meat can lead to a deficiency in iron, leaving you feeling perpetually tired, listless, and weak a condition you would likely interpret as the spiritual ailment of sloth, rather than a physical one. The lack of certain vitamins, especially in the long winter months when fresh vegetables are scarce, weakens your body's natural defenses, making you an easy target for the coughs and fevers that constantly circulate in the damp, cold air of the monastery. Of course, the monks of your time, being resourceful men, developed a clever way to circumvent the strictest of their dietary laws. The rule of Saint Benedict forbids the eating of meat in the refectory. However, the rule also states that the sick, and those who have just been subjected to the common medical procedure of bloodletting, should be allowed to eat meat to rebuild their strength. This was to take place in a separate room, the infirmary, or a special dining hall attached to it known as the Misericorde, the Room of Mercy. It did not take long for this merciful loophole to become a grate. Gaping gateway. On any given day, a surprising number of monks suddenly felt a bit peaky and in need of restorative meat, on a rotating basis. Small groups of you would be sent to the misericord for a meal. Here, away from the rigid silence of the refectory. The rules were relaxed. You could speak, and you could eat a thick, juicy slice of roast beef or pork. A glorious, passionate, and deeply unbenedictine pleasure. Eating meat is forbidden in the dining hall. However, there is a special, I'm feeling a bit peaky room where, by a complete coincidence, they happen to be serving roast beef today. It's a miracle. Your drink is as important as your food. The water, as you know, is often unsafe. Your primary beverages are ale and wine. The monastery has its own brewery and its own vineyard. The ale is thick and nutritious, a kind of liquid bread that provides a significant portion of your daily calories. The wine is for feast days and for the sacrament, but this too has its dangers. For the senior monks, the abbot, the cellar are those who have greater access to the best ale and wine. A new and painful ailment often appears in middle age. Gout. A disease of rich living, found in the heart of a community dedicated to austerity. It is another of the strange paradoxes of your new life, and so you live by the rhythm of the refectory bell. You eat your bland pottage, your coarse dark bread, your endless boiled fish. You look forward to your turn in the misericord with a secret. Guilty pleasure. You drink your daily ration of ale and give thanks for its strength. Your diet is one of piety, designed to deny the flesh and elevate the spirit, but you feel its effects on your body. You feel the lethargy, the vulnerability. You see it in the pallor of your brother's skin. You hear it in their persistent coughs. You understand that the very food you eat, the diet that is a cornerstone of your holy vow, is a quiet accomplice to the damp stones and the close quarters of your sanctuary. It is a diet that leaves your body's fortress poorly manned, its gates open, waiting for the inevitable invasion of sickness. You have settled into the cold, damp life of devotion. Your body has become accustomed to the meager, monotonous diet that is meant to tame your flesh. You have accepted that you live in a fortress for the soul, but one whose physical walls are porous, unable to keep out the invisible enemies of sickness. And one morning, you awaken on your straw pallet feeling a strange, unfamiliar heat behind your eyes and a deep, aching chill in your bones. The invasion has begun. Your first reaction is not a physical one. It is spiritual, as a man of the modern world. Your first thought would be biological. What have I caught? Who was I near? But you are a man of the 13th century. You are a man of God. Your first thought is theological. What have I done in your world? Sickness is rarely seen as a mere mechanical failure of the body. It is an event freighted with profound spiritual meaning. The germ theory of disease lies centuries in your future. An unimaginable concept. Your understanding of your own illness is filtered through the lens of your faith. And there are three primary interpretations, each more terrifying than the last. First, and most commonly, the sickness is a punishment. It is a direct chastisement from God for a sin you have committed. Your fever is a small, temporal taste of the eternal fires of hell, sent to you as a warning, a divine correction. And so, as you lie shivering on your pallet, a frantic, fearful audit of your own soul begins. You search your memory, replaying the last few days, the last few weeks, looking for the transgression that has brought this upon you. Did you feel a flicker of pride in the beauty of your calligraphy in the scriptorium yesterday? That was the sin of superbia. Did you look with envy at the abbot's portion of bread, slightly larger than your own? That was invidia. Did you feel a moment of anger and resentment towards Brother Paul for his incessant snoring in the dormitory Ira? Did you allow your mind to drift during the chanting of the Psalms, your thoughts turning to the secular world, to a woman's face you remember from your life before these walls that was lust, luxuria, a sin of the mind as potent as any sin of the flesh? Your illness becomes a spiritual crisis. The pain in your body is secondary to the terror in your soul. You are convinced that God has found you out, that his gaze is upon you, and that this fever is his righteous judgment, the only path to a cure. Therefore, is not through medicine, but through repentancy, you've come down with a fever and a terrible cough. After a careful diagnosis, the abbot has determined the cause is an excess of pride you felt about your turnip weeding skills last Tuesday. The prescription is 50 Hail Marys and a deep sense of shame. The second possibility is that your sickness is not a punishment, but a test. God, in his mysterious wisdom, is testing your faith. Just as he tested the faith of Job, your suffering has a purpose. It is an opportunity for you to demonstrate your piety, your patience, your unwavering trust in God's plan, to endure the pain without complaint, to accept the fever and the chills as a holy trial, is to gain immense spiritual merit. This view is often preached by the abbot as a way to give meaning to the constant suffering within the monastery walls. Your sickness is not a sign of your sinfulness, but a chance to prove your sainthood. This is a more comforting thought, but it does not lessen the physical misery. The third, and most frightening possibility, is that your illness is not from God at all. It is a direct assault from the forces of darkness. A demon, a foul spirit, has found a crack in your spiritual armor a moment of doubt. A secret sin and has entered your body. The fever, the delirium, the pain. These are the signs of its malevolent presence. It is wrestling with your soul for possession of your physical form. In this case, the cure is not repentance or endurance, but active spiritual warfare. Your sickness is not a private affair. In the intensely communal life of the monastery, one man's illness is a concern for all. Your fever could be a sign of your own personal sin, but it could also be a sign that there is a collective sin within the community that has angered God. Has the monastery as a whole become lax in its duties? Have the chants become rote and uninspired? Is there a secret, unconfessed sin festering in the heart of another brother that has brought this divine displeasure down upon you all? Your personal suffering becomes a matter of public concern and communal soul-searching. Before any physical remedies are considered, the spiritual remedies must be applied. The first step is confession. You are brought before the monastery's priest or the abbot himself. You must pour out your soul, confessing every sin you can remember, every dark thought, every flicker of pride or envy. It is a draining, humiliating process. As you try to find the one specific sin that might be the root cause of your fever, the second step is prayer. Your brothers are instructed to pray for you. A special intention is added to the daily services. They pray for your recovery. But more importantly, they pray for the salvation of your soul. They also direct their prayers to specific heavenly specialists. This is the age of the diseased saints. For nearly every ailment, there is a patron saint whose job it is to intercede with God on your behalf. For a throat ailment, you pray to Saint Blais. For the plague, Saint Roch. For your terrible skin condition, perhaps Saint Giles. And for the mysterious, fiery sickness of ergotism, you pray, of course, to Saint Anthony. This appeal to a specific saint is an obscure but vital part of your world's medical and spiritual practice. The third step is the application of relics. Your monastery is proud of its collection of holy relics, the physical remnants of the saints. You might be brought a small, beautifully carved reliquary of gold and ivory. Inside, resting on a bed of silk, is a splinter of bone from one of the apostles, or a thread from the cloak of a local saint. This object is not just a symbol, It is believed to be imbued with the literal, miraculous power of the saint himself. The reliquary is pressed against your feverish forehead. The cold, smooth metal is a brief, pleasant shock. You lie there, praying that the sacred power contained within the object will drive the sickness from your body and the demon from your soul. Historians and sociologists of religion will later debate the psychological effect of this worldview. Did it create a culture of profound guilt and anxiety, where every physical ailment was a source of spiritual terror? Or did it, in a strange way, provide a sense of meaning and order to the random cruelty of disease? Your suffering was not pointless. It was a chapter in the great, cosmic drama of salvation and damnation. This framework, while terrifying, gave purpose to your pain. For a few days, you submit to this spiritual regimen. You pray until your throat is raw. You examine your conscience until your mind is raw. You allow the holy relics to be pressed against your skin. But the fever does not break. The chills continue to rack your body. Your cough becomes a deep, wet, rattling sound in your chest. The prayers, it seems, are not enough, having exhausted the tools of the spirit. The abbot finally decides it is time to turn to the tools of the flesh. Your soul has been attended to. Now, your body must be addressed. You are to be moved from the common dormitory. You are to be taken to the one place in the monastery where the rules of abstinence are relaxed, where medicines are dispensed, and where pain is a constant companion. You are being sent to the infirmary, to be placed in the hands of the infirmarian and his questionable, often terrifying, cures. Your prayers have gone unanswered. The holy relics have offered no miracle. Your fever still burns, and your cough has settled deep into your chest. A rattling, wet sound that speaks of a sickness beyond the reach of simple piety. The abbot, his face etched with a mixture of spiritual concern and practical resignation, declares that the time for purely spiritual remedies is over. Your soul has been attended to. Now, your rebellious body must be brought to heel. You are to be taken to the infirmary. You are helped from your pallet in the great dormitory by two of your brothers, and half carried across the cold cloister to a separate building. The infirmary is the monastery's hospital, its sick bay, and its final waiting room for the very old. The air inside is different from the rest of the monastery. It is warmer, a fire is kept burning here day and night, but it is also heavy with the smell of sickness, of unwashed linen, of stale urine, and the strange, pungent, and sometimes sweetish smell of the herbal remedies that are its main stock in trade. You are placed in a small, clean bed, a real bed with a wool blanket, a luxury you have not known since you took your vows. You are now under the care of the infirmarian, Brother Benedictus. He is an older monk, a man who has spent decades tending to the sick and dying of the community. He is not a physician in the modern sense. He is a curious mixture of librarian, gardener, and craftsman. His knowledge comes not from experiment, but from ancient texts and from the practical, handed-down lore of the monastery's medicinal herb garden. Brother Benedictus begins his diagnosis. He does not ask you many questions. He observes you with a trained eye. He examines the color and cloudiness of your urine, which you have provided in a small glass flask. He asks to see your stool. He may even taste your sweat or your earwax. He is looking for clues, for signs of the great imbalance that has taken root in your body. His understanding of your illness is based on the medical wisdom of the ancient Greeks, primarily the great physician Galen. This is the theory of the four humors, the central, unshakable pillar of all medieval medicine. Your body, he believes, is governed by four vital fluids: blood, which is hot and moist; phlegm, which is cold and moist; yellow bile, which is hot and dry; and black bile, which is cold and dry. Perfect health is a state of perfect balance between these four humors. All sickness, without exception, is caused by one of these humors becoming excessive or corrupted. He feels your hot, feverish skin. He listens to your wet, rattling cough. He looks at the high color in your cheeks. The diagnosis, to him, is clear. You are suffering from an excess of blood. Your sanguine humor is in a state of dangerous overabundance. Your body is like a waterlogged field, and it must be drained. And so, he prepares the primary, universal, and most respected treatment for almost every ailment known to medieval man, bloodletting. The cure for everything here is bloodletting. Got a fever? Let's drain some blood. Feeling sad? Let's drain some blood. Stubbed your toe? Believe it or not, more blood needs to be drained. It's a very versatile treatment. He first consults a strange chart, a diagram known as the Zodiac Man. This is an obscure but essential part of his diagnostic toolkit. It is a drawing of a human body, with each part linked to a sign of the zodiac. Your lungs, he knows, are governed by Gemini. He must consult his almanac to ensure the moon is not currently in Gemini. To bleed a patient from a part of the body when the moon is in its corresponding sign is considered extremely dangerous. A recipe for disaster. The stars must be aligned for your healing to begin, finding the celestial conditions acceptable. He rolls up the sleeve of your habit. He produces his tools from a leather roll. You see a small, sharp knife called a lancet, and a small, brass bowl. He is not rough. His movements are practiced and professional. He ties a strip of leather tightly around your upper arm. He finds the vein on the inside of your elbow. He murmurs a short prayer. And then, with a quick, decisive movement, he makes a small, neat incision. The blood that emerges is dark, almost black. This, to him, is a sign of its impurity, a confirmation of his diagnosis. The blood flows freely into the brass bowl. He watches it intently, his expression one of deep concentration. He is not just draining you, he is reading the blood, looking for signs. He allows the bowl to fill with a specific amount, perhaps half a pint, before he removes the leather tourniquet and expertly bandages your arm. The immediate effect is that you feel lightheaded and weak. But this is seen as a positive sign. The excess humor has been removed. The body can now begin to find its balance. But Brother Benedictus is not finished. Your treatment is multifaceted. He also prepares a purgative. An excess of one humor often suggests that the others are corrupted as well. Your entire system must be flushed. He gives you a cup of a bitter, foul-tasting herbal concoction, likely containing hellebore or another powerful laxative. The effect is swift and violent. You spend the next few hours in the infirmary's latrine, your body expelling everything from it in a series of wrenching, debilitating spasms. Your diet is also changed. According to the logic of the humors, since your illness is one of excess heat and moisture from the blood, you must now consume foods that are cold and dry. You are forbidden from eating fish or drinking ale. Your diet will now consist of barley bread and certain dry vegetables like lentils. This is the standard, state-of-the-art medical care of your time, and it is a subject of great debate for future historians. Was monastic medicine, with its preservation of classical texts and its systematic use of herbal remedies, a beacon of knowledge in a dark and ignorant age? Or was it a system of profound and harmful quackery, where dogmatic adherence to the flawed theories of the ancients led to treatments, like bloodletting, that actively harmed and weakened the sick as you lie in your infirmary bed, weak from both your fever and your cure? You do not have the perspective to ask such questions. You only have faith in the infirmarian's wisdom. The good news is, the bloodletting has definitely lowered your fever. The bad news is, it's because you now have so little blood left that you're too weak to generate any heat. But hey, progress is progress. Brother Benedictus also employs his deep knowledge of the monastery's herb garden. He makes a poultice of comfrey and yarrow to place on your chest, hoping to soothe the inflammation in your lungs. He brews you a tea from lungwort and horehound, a traditional remedy for coughs. This herbal medicine, based on centuries of practical, observable results, is likely the only part of your treatment that is doing you any actual good. You lie in the infirmary for days, in a state of profound weakness. You are being starved, bled, and purged, all in the name of restoring your humoral balance. Your fate now rests on a strange combination of factors: the untested efficacy of ancient Greek medical theory, the genuine but limited power of herbal remedies, the strength of your own constitution, and the will of God. You have been brought to the sanctuary for the sick, and you have received its questionable cures. Now you can only wait and pray that you are strong enough to survive the treatment. You survived the infirmary. Whether it was by the grace of God, the efficacy of Brother Benedictus's herbal teas, or simply in spite of his enthusiastic bloodletting, your fever eventually breaks and your strength, slowly and grudgingly, returns. You are deemed cured, and you are sent from the relative warmth and privacy of the infirmary back into the cold. Communal life of the monastery. You have overcome the acute, life-threatening invasion. Now you must learn to live with the chronic, maddening, and inescapable scourges that are a permanent part of your new home. It begins with an itch. It starts on your hands. Between your fingers, a small, irritating itch that you barely notice at first. But it doesn't go away. It grows more insistent. It spreads. You find it on your wrists, your elbows, in the warm places of your body under your heavy wool habit. At night, it becomes a kind of madness. Just as you are about to drift off to sleep in the cold, silent dormitory, the itch comes alive. A phantom army of tiny creatures crawling just beneath your skin. You scratch. You can't help it. You scratch until the skin is raw and bleeding, but it provides only a moment's relief before the maddening sensation returns. Even stronger than before. You have been afflicted with what your brothers simply call the itch, a common and miserable companion of monastic life. A modern doctor would diagnose it instantly as scabies, a parasitic infestation caused by a microscopic mite that burrows into your skin to lay its eggs. But you do not know this. You understand the world through the lens of faith and humoral theory. You believe the itch is a sign of hot or restless blood, a corruption of your humors, or worse. You see it as a spiritual affliction, a physical manifestation of an impure thought, a torment sent to test your patience and your piety. The fight against the itch becomes a new spiritual discipline. During the long hours of prayer in the church, you must stand perfectly still, your hands tucked into your sleeves, and ignore the tormenting signals from your own skin. To scratch, to fidget, to show any sign of physical discomfort is to give in to the demands of the flesh, to allow the body to triumph over the spirit. It's hard to have proud thoughts when your main spiritual struggle is not thinking about how much your elbow itches. This scourge, like all others, spreads with merciless efficiency through the communal dormitory. The straw pallets you sleep on, shared in rotation and rarely changed, are a thriving habitat for the mites. You see your brothers scratching themselves with the same frantic, despairing energy as you. It is a shared misery, another cross to be borne. Eventually, the affliction becomes so bad that you are sent back to the infirmary. Brother Benedictus looks at your raw, weeping skin, nods sagely, and confirms his diagnosis of restless humors. He might prescribe another round of bloodletting to cool your overheated blood. But he also has another, more practical remedy. He goes to his store of ointments and produces a small pot of a foul-smelling, yellow paste. It is a mixture of sulfur and pig fat. He instructs you to cover your afflicted skin with it. The ointment is greasy and stinks of brimstone, the very smell of hell. But, miraculously, it works. The sulfur, though he doesn't know why, is a poison to the mites. Over the course of a few days, the maddening itch begins to subside. The good news is they have an ointment for your rash. The bad news is now you're no longer itchy, but you do smell permanently like a volcano's barbecue. It's a trade-off. Scabies is not the only affliction of the skin that thrives in the close quarters of your holy fortress. Ringworm is another common companion. You notice a brother with a strange, red, scaly, and perfectly circular rash on his neck. He believes it to be a mark of the devil. A sinister sign? It is, in fact, a simple fungal infection. Tinea. Spread by the shared towels at the lavabo or the close contact of the dormitory. And then there are the boils and abscesses. A small cut from a gardening tool, a splinter from a wooden bench, can easily become infected in the generally unhygienic environment. The area becomes red, swollen, and exquisitely painful, a hard knot forming under the skin. The infirmarian's treatment for this is a poultice of hot bread and milk, or boiled onions, to draw out the poison and bring the boil to a head. Then comes the terrifying part, the lancing. Brother Benedictus will take his small, unsterilized knife, murmur a prayer, and quickly pierce the boil. The release of pressure is a moment of profound, sickening relief, followed by the very real danger of a deeper, more serious infection in the open wound. Your skin, which should be a simple container for your body, becomes a constant source of misery and spiritual anxiety. It is a battleground. And in this world, where the body is seen as a reflection of the soul, a diseased skin is often interpreted as a sign of a diseased spirit. You may have seen a man with a persistent, scaly skin condition, perhaps what a future age would call psoriasis, and heard the whispers among your brothers. Leprosy. It is the most feared word in your vocabulary. While true leprosy, Hansen's disease, would mean immediate and permanent expulsion to a leper colony outside the city walls. The fear of being misdiagnosed is a constant terror for anyone with a stubborn rash. Your physical appearance and your spiritual standing are inextricably linked. Historians will one day debate the prevalence of these diseases in monastic life. When they read the chronicles written by monks, they will find frequent references to itching, to sores, to pustules. Are these accurate medical records of a community riddled with skin disease? Or are they a literary device, a religious trope, a way for the monk author to write about the constant mortification of the flesh, the struggle of the pure soul against its corrupt and failing physical vessel, the archaeological evidence, the remains of monastic plumbing? The layout of the dormitories suggests that the physical reality was likely every bit as grim as the chronicles imply. You are finally cured of your itch. The sulfur ointment has worked its foul-smelling magic. You return once again to your duties. You have survived an acute fever. You have endured a chronic parasitic infestation. You have been bled, purged, and anointed with smelly pastes. You are beginning to feel like a veteran of the infirmary. You look at your own hands, the skin still red and healing, and you wonder what other specific, unique forms of suffering this holy life has in store for you. You have been assigned a new duty, a great honor for a literate monk like you. You are to work in the scriptorium, the quiet, holy room where God's word is made manifest on parchment. It is, you think, a safe haven, a clean and scholarly place, far from the filth and sickness of the common areas. You will soon learn that even the sacred act of writing has its own dark and peculiar ailments. You are cured. The foul-smelling sulfur ointment has driven the scabies mites from your skin, and the maddening itch has subsided into a memory. You have survived a fever that could have killed you, and a skin affliction that could have driven you mad. As a reward for your endurance, and in recognition of your literacy, the abbot assigns you a new and highly respected duty. You are to become a scribe. You are to work in the scriptorium, the quiet, sacred room where the word of God is preserved and copied. You feel a profound sense of honor and relief. The scriptorium is the intellectual heart of the monastery. It is a clean, orderly, and silent place. A world away from the filth of the animal pens, the dampness of the laundry, and the grueling labor of the fields. You imagine a life of peaceful, scholarly contemplation. Your days spent in the holy and painless task of copying beautiful letters onto smooth parchment. You have found, you believe, the ultimate sanctuary within the sanctuary. You will soon learn, however, that even the holy act of writing has its own subtle and insidious diseases. You enter the scriptorium for the first time. It is a long, narrow room, usually built on the north side of the cloister to receive steady, indirect light. The air is cool and smells of old parchment, which has a faint animal scent, and of the sharp, oaky smell of the ink. The only sound is the gentle, rhythmic scratching of a dozen quill pens on vellum, a sound like mice scurrying behind a wall. Each monk sits at his own slanted wooden desk, or carrel. The silence is absolute, a rule enforced with strict severity by the precentor. The monk in charge of the library and the scriptorium, your new life begins. You are given your tools, a sharpened goose quill, a pot of black ink made from oak galls and iron salts, a scraping knife for correcting errors, and a sheet of precious, creamy smooth vellum parchment made from the treated skin of a calf. Your task is to copy a page from an old Bible, matching the elegant script of the original as perfectly as possible. At first, the work is a deep and satisfying pleasure. It is a form of prayer, a meditation. You lose yourself in the careful formation of each letter. But after a few weeks, the physical reality of the work begins to assert itself. The first affliction is in your eyes. The scriptorium is well lit for a medieval building, but that is a very relative term. The light from the high windows is often dim and gray, especially on the overcast days that are so common in your northern climate. Artificial light is almost never used. A single overturned candle could destroy centuries of work and send 1,000 priceless manuscripts up in flames. So you work in the gloom. You spend 6 to 8 hours a day hunched over your desk, your eyes focused on the tiny, intricate black letters. Slowly, your vision begins to suffer. At the end of the day, your eyes burn and water. You develop a constant, dull headache that sits right behind your eyeballs. The letters on the page sometimes seem to blur and swim together. You look at the older monks in the scriptorium. You see them holding the pages closer and closer to their faces, their eyes narrowed in a permanent, squinting effort. You see them make mistakes, their hands trembling slightly. You realize you are looking at your own future. You've been promoted to the scriptorium. It's a quiet, scholarly environment where you can slowly go blind and develop a permanent hunchback. It's considered a very prestigious position. Then there are the pains in your body. You sit for hours on a hard, backless wooden bench. Leaning over your slanted desk, a deep, grinding ache settles into your lower back and your neck. Your shoulders become a tight, painful knot of muscle. The hand that holds the quill pen begins to cramp. A repetitive strain injury that makes the fine control needed for calligraphy a daily struggle. Your legs, from the long hours of sitting, grow stiff and swollen, but the most dangerous ailments of the scriptorium are the ones you cannot see, the ones you do not even know exist. They are the slow poisons you work with every day. You are not just a copyist. You are also tasked with helping to create the beautiful illuminated manuscripts. The Bibles and Psalters adorned with vibrant, jewel-like illustrations, and the pigments used to create these illustrations are a toxic soup of heavy metals. One day, you are assigned to help Brother Thomas, the master illuminator, prepare his paints. He shows you the raw materials, which look like beautiful colored stones and powders. He hands you a lump of a brilliant red, crystalline mineral. It is cinnabar, He tells you, the source of the perfect vermilion red used for the robes of the saints. He does not tell you that it is also mercury sulfide, a deadly neurotoxin. He shows you a piece of bright yellow. Glassy rock. This is orpiment, he explains, for making a brilliant, golden yellow. He does not know that it is arsenic sulfide. For the whites, you use a heavy white powder, the best base for any paint. It is white lead. For the greens, you use verdigris, a pigment made by treating copper plates with vinegar fumes. Your job is to take these minerals and grind them into a fine powder with a stone mortar and pestle. As you work, a fine, colored dust fills the air around you, which you breathe into your lungs. You then mix these toxic powders with a binder, usually egg white or gum arabic, to create the paint, to get a fine. Sharp point on your brush, you follow the common practice of licking the tip. With every lick, you are ingesting a small, untraceable amount of lead, of arsenic, of mercury. The art is beautiful, but you're developing a strange twitch and a taste for metal. The effects are not immediate, they are slow, cumulative, and insidious. Over the years, you begin to develop a host of strange, chronic ailments. A persistent, faint tremor appears in your writing hand. You have a constant, metallic taste in your mouth. You suffer from bouts of colic, of sharp, intestinal pain that the infirmarian cannot explain. Your mind, once sharp, sometimes feels foggy and confused. You are suffering from chronic heavy metal poisoning, but you do not know this. No one does. You and Brother Benedictus interpret your symptoms through the only lens you have, the theory of the four humors. He diagnoses your tremors as an excess of windy humors. Your stomach pains are a result of corrupted black bile. He treats you with his usual remedies, bloodletting to rebalance your humors, and herbal purgatives to cleanse your system. The treatments, of course, do nothing. They only weaken you further. Historians of science and art will one day debate the true extent of this professional hazard. How many of the strange, lingering illnesses described in monastic chronicles were the result of this slow, occupational poisoning? Was the divine madness or the holy tremors that afflicted some famous illuminators actually the tragic neurological symptoms of mercury poisoning? The evidence is circumstantial, but compelling. You, a humble scribe, are a living data point in this future debate. The psychological strain of the work also takes its toll. The parchment you work on is incredibly expensive. A single sheet of high-quality vellum could represent the skin of an entire calf. A large Bible might require the skins of 100 animals or more. A mistake is a costly disaster. A slip of the knife while ruling the page. A spatter of ink from a clumsy quill. A misspelled word, any of these could ruin a week's worth of work. The pressure to achieve perfection is immense. The presenter inspects your work daily, his critical eye missing nothing. A mistake earns you a harsh rebuke and a difficult penance, perhaps a week of eating only bread and water. And so you work, day after day, in the sacred, silent, and toxic room. Your body is slowly breaking down. Your eyes are failing. Your back is a constant landscape of pain. Your hands are beginning to tremble. The holy work to which you have dedicated your life. The act of creating beautiful things for the glory of God is slowly, imperceptibly, poisoning you. Eventually, you are no longer able to perform the work. Your eyesight is too poor to see the fine lines. Your hands too unsteady to control the quill. You are retired from the scriptorium. The abbot, in recognition of your decades of faithful service, gives you lighter duties. You are to tend the monastery's beehives, or to work in the herb garden. Your days now spent in the fresh air and the sunlight. It is a mercy. But as you walk through the garden, you feel a profound sense of loss. You have created dozens of beautiful books, objects that will be treasured as sacred for centuries to come. but you have paid for that immortality with your own health. You are another victim of the monastery, not of a dramatic plague or a sudden fever, but of a slow, quiet sickness contracted in the very service of your god. You are an old monk now. The holy work in the scriptorium that consumed your youth and poisoned your body is a distant memory. Your hands tremble too much for the fine art of calligraphy. And your eyes, after decades of squinting in the dim light, can no longer distinguish the intricate letters. You have been retired. The abbot, in recognition of your long service, has given you lighter duties. You spend your days in the monastery's herb garden, the Hortus Medicus, a place of quiet, fragrant peace. Your job is to tend the same herbs that Brother Benedictus once used to treat you the comfrey. The lungwort, the chamomile, at first. This quiet life feels like a blessing, a gentle and well-earned respite after a lifetime of disciplined labor. The sun on your back is a warm and welcome sensation. The smell of the damp earth and the fragrant herbs is a soothing balm. But as the seasons turn, and the days fall into a new, slower, and less demanding rhythm, a strange and unwelcome visitor begins to creep into the quiet corners of your mind. It is not a physical sickness. It is an ailment of the soul. It arrives, most often, in the middle of the day. During the 6th hour, when the sun is at its highest and the day's work seems to stretch on into a meaningless eternity, it is a feeling of profound listlessness, of a spiritual weariness so deep that it feels like a physical weight. The simple act of pulling a weed from the garden feels like a task of monumental, pointless effort. The vibrant colors of the flowers seem dull and faded. The beautiful plainsong chant drifting from the church, which once lifted your soul, now sounds like a dreary, monotonous drone. You feel a deep and gnawing restlessness. You cannot stand to be in your own small cell, which now feels like a tomb. You cannot stand to be in the garden. You look out from the high monastery walls at the green, secular world beyond, and you feel a powerful, shameful urge to simply walk out the gates, to abandon your vows, to flee this holy life that now feels like a prison. Your prayers become empty words. Ashes in your mouth, you kneel in the cold church, but you feel nothing. The presence of God, which was once a certainty, has been replaced by a vast, silent, indifferent void. You look at your brothers, at their pious, placid faces, and you feel a surge of irrational irritation. The sound of their chanting, the way they slurp their pottage in the refectory, it all fills you with a pointless, simmering anger. And with the anger comes a deep, bottomless despair. You look back on your long life within these walls, on your decades of prayer and labor, and you are struck by a terrifying thought. What if it was all for nothing? What if I have wasted my one and only life in the service of a silent God? You have been afflicted by the most feared of all monastic spiritual diseases. The early desert fathers called it acedia. It is the noonday demon, the great sickness of the soul that attacks those who have dedicated their lives to God. It is not simple sadness or laziness. It is a radical, soul-crushing despair, a spiritual paralysis that drains the world of all meaning and all color. You've come down with a classic case of acedia. It's a spiritual condition whose main symptoms are the overwhelming desire to take a nap during prayer and the suspicion that your entire life's work is meaningless. It's basically a 13th century existential crisis. You are not the first to suffer this. It is a well-known enemy within these walls. You confess your state to the abbot, your voice a monotone of despair. He is not surprised. He has seen this demon many times before. He does not offer you sympathy or psychological counsel. He offers you the prescribed spiritual cure. Your condition, he explains, is a temptation, a direct assault by a demon who preys on idle hands and weary souls. The cure is not rest, it is work and prayer. You must fight, the abbot tells you, his voice firm but not unkind. You must force your body to perform its duties. even when your spirit rebels. The demon of acedia cannot stand the sound of a psalm sung with a sincere heart, nor the sight of a brother engaged in honest, humble labor, and so your battle begins. It is a quiet, internal war, fought in the landscape of your own mind. You are given a new task scrubbing the long stone floors of the cloister. It is mindless, repetitive, back-breaking work. You are on your hands and knees for hours. The cold, damp stone seeping into your bones. The harsh lye soap stinging your hands. The abbot's theory is that the simple, physical exhaustion will leave no room in your mind for the demon to whisper its poison. The cure for your soul-crushing despair is to be given some very tedious manual labor. The idea is that it's hard to question the nature of your reality when you're busy scrubbing a very large floor. You are instructed to pray without ceasing, even when the words feel like sawdust in your mouth. You must say them. You repeat the Psalms over and over, a shield of holy words against the encroaching silence. You are also given custody of the eyes, an obscure but important monastic discipline. You must keep your gaze lowered at all times, to look only at the floor a few feet in front of you. You are not to look out the windows at the tempting green world beyond, for that is where the demon finds his entry point. Showing you what you have given up and filling you with regret, modern psychologists would have a different name for your condition. They would call it clinical depression, or burnout, or an existential crisis. They would see it as a natural psychological response to a life of immense repression, monotony, and social isolation. But this is a debate for a future you cannot imagine. For you, the battle is real, the demon is real, and the stakes are your immortal soul. You see brothers around you who have lost this battle. Some simply left the monastery, disappearing back into the world. Others remain, but they are hollow shells, going through the motions of the monastic life with dead eyes and a permanent air of quiet. Settled despair, your days become a slow, grinding war of attrition against the grayness in your own mind. Some days, the demon wins. The despair is a thick fog you cannot see through, and you can do nothing but lie on your pallet, your face turned to the stone wall. But other days, you win. A shaft of sunlight through a high window. The unexpected beauty of a line of chant sung in perfect harmony. A moment of quiet connection with another brother. These small things can sometimes pierce the fog, reminding you of the reason you came here in the first place. You do not defeat the demon of acedia. You learn to live with it. You accept it as a kind of spiritual thorn in your flesh, a permanent companion whose presence keeps you humble and reminds you of your utter dependence on God's grace. A grace that you can only feel in its absence. You find a new, quieter, and more weary kind of peace. The peace of a veteran soldier who knows the war will never be truly over. You have found a fragile equilibrium within the walls of your sanctuary. You have battled the sicknesses of the body and the demons of the soul. And you have, in your own way, survived. But as you find this measure of internal peace, a new and terrible sickness is gathering in the world outside your gates. It is a disease of unimaginable virulence, a true plague that will not test the soul but will simply annihilate the body. It is the great pestilence, the Black Death, and it is moving across Europe, drawing ever closer to the monastery. It is a storm that no stone wall can stop, a judgment that will make your own small. Private despair seemed like a trivial indulgence. You have found a weary peace. Your life as an old monk in the monastery garden is a quiet, predictable rhythm. The great spiritual crisis of acedia, the noonday demon, has not been vanquished, but you have learned to live with its shadow. You have accepted your lot. You have made your peace with the silence of God. You have built a fragile shelter for your soul within these stone walls. And then, from the world beyond those walls, a new wind begins to blow, carrying with it the seeds of a pestilence so vast and so terrible that it will make all your previous sufferings the fevers, the itches, The spiritual despairs seem like trivial. Childish complaints. It starts, as great and terrible things often do, as a rumor. A traveling merchant delivering wine to the monastery's cellars brings the first stories. He speaks of a great sickness in the far-off ports of Italy, a disease that arrived on Genoese trading ships from the east. He tells a wild, unbelievable tale of ships drifting into harbor with their entire crews dead, their bodies covered in strange, black swellings. You and your brothers listen to these stories, and you shake your heads. The world outside has always been a place of chaos and exaggerated tales. You are safe here. You are men of God, surely. He will protect his own. The rumors grow more frequent, more alarming. A novice, arriving to join the order, speaks of entire villages being wiped out in France. He says the sickness travels through the very air, that it can pass from a single glance. The fear is a distant drumbeat, growing steadily louder. The abbot orders special prayers, processions, and fast to ward off the encroaching evil. You pray with a renewed fervor, and then it arrives at your gate. It does not come as a conquering army. It comes as a sick peasant from the tenant farms, begging for a final blessing. He collapses at the gatehouse, his body burning with a fever unlike any you have ever seen. The infirmarian, Brother Benedictus, has him brought to a private cell in the infirmary. He examines the man and is baffled. The fever is raging, but then a new symptom appears. Something not written of in his ancient books of Galen. A great, hard, and exquisitely painful swelling begins to grow in the man's groin. A lump the size of a chicken's egg. It quickly darkens, from a red to a deep, bruised purple, then to black. The man dies that night, his mind lost in a delirious agony. 2 days later, Brother Benedictus himself takes to his bed with a violent fever and a shivering chill. And a black, swollen bubo appears in his armpit. The panic begins. This is not a familiar ailment. This is not an imbalance of the humors. This is the great pestilence from the stories. The Black Death has breached your walls. The monastery, your sanctuary, becomes a death trap. The very things that define your life, your communal existence, your devotion to caring for your brothers now become the mechanisms of your own destruction. The plague spreads with the speed and fury of a forest fire. The man who sleeps next to you in the dormitory awakens one morning with the fever. By nightfall, the black buboes are upon him. The next morning, he is dead. You help carry his body, wrapped in its blanket, to the cemetery, but you know that you have breathed the same air as him, that his fleas may have jumped to your habit. You are a dead man walking. The infirmary is overwhelmed in a matter of days. It is no longer a place of healing. It is a charnel house. The infirmarian's cures are useless. He tries bloodletting, but it only seems to hasten the victim's death. His herbal remedies have no effect on this monstrous disease. He himself dies, weeping and confessing that his knowledge is worthless against this clear wrath of God, the daily routine of the monastery. The great, comforting rhythm of the canonical hours that has structured your life for decades collapses. The bell still rings for matins, but only a handful of terrified monks. The walking well shuffle into the great, dark church. Their voices are thin and reedy in the vast, empty space. The plainsong chant a fragile thread of sound in a world consumed by death. The sound of the death cart, its wheels creaking as it carries another body to the plague pit, becomes a more regular part of your soundscape than the church bell. You see all the forms of the plague, an obscure but terrifying reality of the pandemic. You see the bubonic form with its telltale swellings, but you also see others. A brother begins to cough, and what comes up is not phlegm, but a frothy, pink spray of blood. He dies within a day. This is the pneumonic plague, and you know, with a cold certainty, that it passes directly from person to person on the breath. You see another monk, strong and healthy in the morning, suddenly collapse, his skin turning a dark, dusky color as his blood is poisoned. He is dead in a matter of hours, with no buboes at all. This is the septicemic plague. There is no logic, no pattern. There is only death. In a dozen different, terrifying forms, your entire worldview, your understanding of God and your place in the world, shatters. You have been taught that a pious life, a life of prayer and devotion, is a shield against God's wrath, but the plague is utterly, terrifyingly indiscriminate. It takes the most devout and the most lax. It takes the young, strong novice and the wise, holy abbot. It takes the brother who scourged himself in penance and the brother who secretly drank the good wine from the cellars. None of it matters. Piety is not a shield. Prayer is not a cure. You are all just chaff before a great and terrible wind. You are faced with an impossible theological crisis. Why is this happening? Is God so angry at the sins of the world that he has unleashed a punishment that consumes both the sinner and the saint? Or is it something worse? Is it that he is not angry at all, but simply indifferent, or that he is not there? The questions are a blasphemy, but they rise in your mind, unstoppable. Historians will one day study this moment and see it as a great turning point. The Black Death will shatter the confidence of the medieval world, shaking the foundations of both the church and the feudal system. They will debate the mortality rates in places like yours. Some will argue that monasteries, with their closed, crowded populations, suffered more than anyone, with some communities being wiped out entirely. Others will suggest that your isolation may have offered some small protection. But for you, it is a simple, brutal reality. You are watching your entire world die. You survive. By sheer, random, inexplicable luck, you do not fall ill. Or perhaps you get the fever, but by some miracle of your own constitution, you fight it off. You become one of the handful of survivors in a monastery of ghosts. Your new work is the grimmest of all. The individual graves in the monastery cemetery are full. You and the other few survivors must now dig a grate. Open pit outside the walls, all day. You help drag the bodies of your fallen brothers, their limbs stiff, their faces frozen in masks of agony. And you dump them, one on top of the other, into the common grave. There are no more funeral rites, no more last words. There is only the grim, repetitive work of disposing of the dead. The plague finally burns itself out. The last of the sick have died. A profound, unnatural silence settles over the monastery. You walk through the halls, your footsteps echoing in the emptiness. You look at the empty beds in the dormitory, the empty seats in the refectory, the empty stalls in the choir of the great church. The magnificent stone fortress that was once a bustling hub of prayer and work is now a tomb. Its spirit has been broken. You are alive. You have survived the greatest catastrophe to strike the world in 1,000 years. But you are left in the ruins. Your heart a hollowed-out cavern of grief and confusion. Your faith, which has been your rock, your guide, your entire reason for being, has been tested to the breaking point, and you are no longer sure what you believe. You are an old man, alone in a house of the dead, left to face the final sickness, the decline of your own body. In a world that God seems to have abandoned, the great plague recedes, like a terrible tide, leaving behind a world that is emptier, quieter, and haunted by the memory of its passing. Your monastery has survived, but it is a ghost of its former self, of the 50 brothers who once filled the choir with their chanting. Less than a dozen remain. The great dormitory feels vast and hollow. The scriptorium is silent, its desks gathering dust. The great knowledge of the master illuminators lost forever. The The routine of the Rule of Saint Benedict continues. The bells still ring to mark the canonical hours, but it is a routine performed by a skeleton crew, a ritual of memory rather than a vibrant. Living faith, you're an old man, and you have survived it all. You have survived the temptations of the world, the cold and the damp, the meager diet, the fevers, the itches, and the great pestilence itself. You are a relic, a living testament to a world that has vanished, and now, in the long, quiet twilight of your life, you face the final, unavoidable disease, the one for which there is no cure. You face the slow, steady, and painful decline of your own body. It begins in your joints. The deep, damp chill of the monastery stones, which you have endured for more than 60 years, has finally done its work. A deep, grinding ache settles in your knees, your hips, your knuckles. It is arthritis. Every movement becomes a slow, deliberate, and painful effort. Getting out of your low pallet in the morning is a 10-minute ordeal of groans and stiff-limbed maneuvering. The long walk across the cloister to the church feels like a pilgrimage in itself. Your eyes, once sharp enough to copy the most intricate of scripts, have failed you. The world has become a watery, indistinct blur. You cannot read the holy books anymore. You recognize your brothers more by the sound of their voice or the shuffle of their walk than by the sight of their faces. Your breath is short, and a deep, rattling cough is your constant companion, a permanent souvenir of a lifetime spent breathing the cold, damp air of the church and the dormitory. Your teeth, worn down by the grit in your coarse bread and loosened by bouts of scurvy you never understood, have mostly fallen out, making even the soft pottage difficult to eat. You realize, no longer useful. You cannot work in the gardens. You cannot clean the floors. You cannot even participate fully in the choir, as your voice is a weak and reedy thing. And so, you are retired. You are sent back to the one place you have always feared and resisted the infirmary, but this time, you are not sent there to be cured. You are sent there to die. The infirmary is your final home. You are given a bed, and your days are spent in a slow, quiet routine of waiting. The other beds are filled with the other survivors of your generation, all, like you, succumbing to the gentle, inexorable decay of old age. The conversations are quiet, the memories long, in the wake of the Great Plague. A new kind of literature has become popular in the world outside, and a copy has found its way to your monastery library. It is the Ars Moriendi, The Art of Dying. It is a small book that provides guidance on how to achieve a good death. It is not about medicine. It is about the final spiritual battle for your soul. An obscure but now vital text. It outlines the 5 temptations the devil will throw at you on your deathbed: a lack of faith, despair, impatience, spiritual pride, and avarice. And it provides the 5 inspirations, the counter-arguments, that you must cling to. Your dying is not a passive event. It is your final act of spiritual warfare. As you lie in your bed, your body weakening day by day, you begin this final battle. When despair at your wasted, painful life creeps in, you must recall the hope offered by the story of the penitent thief on the cross. When impatience at the slowness of your end arises, you must meditate on the patience of Job. Your death becomes your last. Great work. The day comes when you know the end is near. You can no longer rise from your bed. The abbot is summoned. He comes to your bedside, accompanied by a young monk carrying the sacred elements. This is the viaticum, the final communion. The word means provision for a journey, and it is your last meal before you embark on your final pilgrimage into the unknown territory of death. The abbot places the thin, papery wafer on your tongue. Its familiar taste is a final comfort. Then comes the sacrament of extreme unction, the last rites. The abbot anoints your senses with holy oil, your eyes that can no longer see, your ears that can no longer hear, your hands that can no longer work, praying that any sin committed through them may be forgiven. Your brothers, the last few remaining survivors of your generation, gather around your bed. They begin to chant the psalms for the dying. Their voice is a familiar, comforting murmur. They are your escort. Their prayers a shield to protect your soul as it begins to detach itself from the failing prison of your body. Your breathing becomes shallow. The world begins to fade. The faces of your brothers become indistinct blurs. The sound of the chanting grows distant, as if coming from another room. You are letting go. You are not afraid. You have spent your entire life preparing for this single moment. You have lived in a fortress designed to protect your soul. A place that has broken your body with its cold, its damp, its sickness, and its despair. But you have endured. You have kept the faith. Or some weary, battered version of it. And now, you are going home. You close your eyes for the last time, and you let the silence you once feared welcome you like an old friend. And so, the old monk's long journey comes to its final. Quiet end, his battles are over. Let the image of the cold, stone infirmary, and the sound of the fading chant dissolve into the gentle peace of your own room. The story of his life. A life of devotion, of hardship, and of profound faith in the face of suffering, can now be laid to rest. The history is written. The book is closed. Bring your awareness back to the simple, profound comfort of where you are now, to the softness of your bed, to the steady, easy rhythm of your own breathing. The world of the monastery, with its saints and its demons, its fevers and its prayers, is a distant shore, and you are safe in your own quiet harbor. There are no more trials to endure tonight, no more spiritual battles to be fought. The only task before you is one of gentle surrender. Surrender to the stillness of the night. Surrender to the comfort of your bed. Surrender to the weariness of your own body. A weariness earned not through hardship, but through the simple living of your own day. Allow your mind to become as quiet and as uncluttered as the empty monastery corridors. Let go of the story. Let go of the day's thoughts and worries, and allow yourself to drift on the soft, silent current of the night, towards the deep and peaceful sanctuary of sleep.